So today I want to introduce you to a research question that I found incredibly interesting and relevant to our high school. So that question will be, do short-term immersion trips affect academic performance and cultural engagement in high school students? So short-term immersion trips have become increasingly popular among high school students as they offer a unique opportunity to experience new cultures and languages, as well as to develop skills and competencies. So after surveying 500 schools, the National Center of Education Statistics writes that more than 98% of public schools employed strategies to support pandemic-related learning recovery during the 2021 school year. So one of these strategies to increase student education was offering more enrichment immersion programs, with 75% of the 500 schools surveyed offering new programs for students to engage in immersion experiences. So ever since COVID, there's been a bigger focus on giving students the opportunity to go on these immersion trips, and my research question dives into if these immersion trips are actually effective in building a stronger sense of community and improving academic performance, as this was the goal. This should be the goal of every school in an immersion trip. So, now I'm going on to my literature review. My first article I want to talk about was written by Jennifer Steele from American University in 2017. Her research question is, what are the effects of dual language immersion programs on student achievement? So her research study focused on 7 cohorts of students who applied to a pre-K or kindergarten immersion slot in Portland for the fall term of 2004 through 2010. And the methods she used were interviews with each individual student, classes, and teachers, and standardized testing, particularly grammar, reading, writing, and mathematics. So the conclusion she was able to get from this literature, or from her research, was that there is a positive causal effect of immersion programs on student test scores, specifically on the writing, reading, and social science part of the standardized testing. So this was a really important article to me because it takes an immersion trip and it finds a causal relationship, not just a correlational research, on academic performance. So this is one of the first articles I picked, and that kind of led me down the path of wanting to explore immersion trips and their effect on academics. My second piece of literature, its research question was, how do immersion trips affect the compassion among college students? This is written by Thomas Plant in 2007, and this research focused on 123 college students, and they were given questionnaires after they went on a university-sponsored immersion trip. And the method they used for this was anonymous questionnaires, but the students did have to sign a waiver saying that the university could publish and look at their data of their GPA before they go on an immersion trip and after going on the immersion trip. The conclusion that this research came to, was community-based learning seeks to increase student and community engagement. So they did find a correlation in that immersion trips, students surveyed right after going on university-sponsored immersion trips did have a higher engagement in their community and found more compassion and were more willing to involve themselves in local organizations and charities. One important thing to note about this literature review is that there was a big distinction with gender-skewed data because the 123 college students were mixed between female and male, but the females did show a higher sign of compassion. This is important to me because, this research is really important to me because in contrast to the first article I looked at, this one focused on compassion. So after I read this article, I knew that the 2 things I wanted to measure with immersion trips at my school were academics and engagement with culture and community. And the school I go to is all male, and they did note that there was a distinction between female and male, and this would affect the applicability of my research to mainly just my community, or to other parts of the state. Now, talking about my third piece of literature, this research question was measuring the impact of university first-year experience programs on student GPA and retention. This is written by Eric Jamaleski in 2008. So this focused on one Midwest public university, and it analyzed its first-year immersion program for all freshmen, and it wanted to look at how it affected their freshman GPA. So the method it used was GPA analysis through an anonymous questionnaire, and the conclusion that it came to was on average, students who went on the first-year experience program earned higher GPAs than the other first-year experience students. So this pretty much shows, I basically based my research, half of my research question off of this because I wanted to directly look at the academic impact, and a great way to directly look at the academic impact is through a standardized score like a GPA. So now for my method. So I chose to approach my research through quantitative analysis, which is analysis of patterns and data. So the programs I would be evaluating are the immersion trips offered by Berkeley College Prep, a private all-boys Jesuit high school. I initially considered narrative research style, like case study research style, or interviews with IRB, but I ultimately decided that a need for an IRB form, a need for private location, frequent email and in-person reminders to random students would kind of outweigh the quality and quantity of data that I would want to receive from the student body in that short period of time that I measured it. So quantitative analysis doesn't necessarily find statistic correlations or experimental effects, but it does show patterns in factors and outcomes, which was the ultimate goal of my research. And additionally, quantitative research typically involves larger sample sizes compared to interview research, just for the sake of efficiency and time, so allowing for greater statistical power and increased generalization of my findings. So next time on my survey distribution, so I use a Google form, and a Google form consisting of multiple questions, and they were selected. A Google form survey consisting of multiple choice questions was selected as the most comprehensive and efficient method to collect data regarding the background and experiences of each student. So surveys were distributed to students ranging from the age of 13 to 18, coming from different kinds of backgrounds. So while I plan on sending mass emails to students from all years at the high school, I instead chose to specifically contact freshman counselors, senior advisors, and immersion trip club leaders. So this allowed me to have a targeted distribution of surveys, and I was able to ensure that the responses I got were from students who had definitely gone on immersion trips, which is the group I wanted, which was the main thing I wanted to test. Essentially, if a person who had not gone on an immersion trip received this survey, they would not be able to fill this out because their data would be irrelevant to what I was testing for. And my data collection period was open and distributed from February 16th to March 3rd, with spikes in responses promptly after email reminders. So talking about the survey design. So the Google form I created consisted of a total of 18 questions split into 6 sections: immersion engagement, education, age and ethnicity, religion, political bias, socioeconomic status, and at the very beginning of the survey were the main things I wanted to see were: did the trips motivate you to learn more about language and culture? Have immersion trips improved your engagement with activities in and out of Brophy? And have immersion trips improved your academic performance? So although these are the main things I was looking for, I also wanted to get a comprehensive background of each student I was looking at. So I wanted to see maybe if any backgrounds or factors could influence the decisions and the outcomes of these core questions. And to test this, I mainly used a Likert scale, going from strongly disagree with a score of 1 to strongly agree with a score of 5. And one important thing to note about this survey design was that I did not think socioeconomic status was a super important part of my research, but turns out it actually did reveal that there were some hidden patterns. And one issue with socioeconomic status is that it's really hard to simply just put middle class, lower class, upper class, because not many students, that's subjective to some people. One person's upper class may be different from another person's upper class. So I instead opted to do an interval range of family annual incomes. So students were able to select their household's pre-tax annual income as a way for me to judge their socioeconomic status. So going over my general results, which was looking at the core 3 questions. This one's about the motivation of language and culture question. So out of all the responses, 53.4% would strongly agree or agree, and 32.8% put uncertain of the benefit. So the pattern I saw was that immersion trips did seem to increase students' motivation in learning language and culture, but I didn't see it as a particularly strong pattern because the whole purpose of these immersion trips offered at this school are to engage in different cultures, and only around 50% of people actually felt like they actually were motivated to learn about language and culture. Going over the other part of what I was looking for in the general results. So improvements in community engagement. So 80% put strongly agree or agree, while only 12.4% put uncertain of the benefit. This shows a pretty strong pattern of a large majority of students feel like the immersion trips at Brophy actually made a tangible improvement to their community engagement. And how I worded the question was community engagement in the campus and out of the campus. And this was a strong kind of immersion trips and improving community engagement. The other part of my research question was academics. So amongst the general results, around 25% would strongly agree or agree, and this is a pretty weak pattern of academic performance. Only a fourth of students going on these immersion trips felt like going on these trips had provided any academic benefit at all. So this surprised me because the previous literature I looked at showed that there actually was a pretty strong pattern of students going on immersion trips and their engagement in school and their academic performance. So this lack of effect in academics led me to dive deeper into looking at the actual data and the backgrounds and the factors I tested for originally. So this is essentially what I did was I made a profile for each student and I put their responses for each section. So you can see I organized my class rigor, GPA, income, and their political bias, and I tried to find any patterns that stuck out as outliers. And the one really interesting thing I found was that when I filtered responses by GPA, 58% of students with GPAs from under 3.0 to 3.39 could strongly agree or agreed, in comparison to only 18% of students with 3.4 GPAs and higher could strongly agree or agree. This shows that a strong pattern of lower GPA leading to increased immersion trip academic effect. So essentially, to boil it down, the lower your GPA is, the more academic performance boost you would get from going on these short-term immersion trips than if you had a higher GPA. And this actually correlates pretty well to my third article that I talked about, analyzing the GPA of students. It turns out that the research also found that the lower the student's GPA was, there was a pattern of them actually having better GPA improvement. So this shows that my research actually does agree with the previous research that I didn't think actually existed until now, or until looking back. And then another really interesting thing is when you filter by GPA, there's also something different that comes out with improvements in communication. So 74% of students with GPAs from under 3.0 to 3.39 would strongly agree, while only 22.2% of students with 3.4 GPAs and higher could strongly agree. So there's a pretty big polarization between GPAs and academic performance and community engagement. So this shows that there's a strong pattern of lower GPAs leading to increased immersion trip community effect. So comparing these two really important graphs, the big pattern that I see is that the lower a student's GPA is, specifically 3.39 and under, the more actual tangible effect that they're going to receive on their academics and their immersion and their community engagement in comparison with higher GPAs. So going over my limitations of research. So just like any research, the work I conducted is definitely not perfect. A large limitation of the study was the amount of time I gave potential participants. So I sent out and kept the survey for around 2 weeks. And I initially believed that 2 weeks would suffice to garner around 100 responses out of 1,300 students in the school. I didn't anticipate the lack of responses when the 2-week deadline came, but this didn't really play a huge factor into my research. So increasing availability of the survey through longer submission periods and more teacher outreach could have helped to smooth out data collection and increase applicability. Another limitation may be the limited availability of peer-reviewed literature on my topic of interest. This may affect the ability to fully contextualize the findings and provide a comprehensive review of the existing literature. And the lack of widely available peer-reviewed literature may also limit the ability to compare and contrast the findings of previous research and may impact the validity and reliability of the study. There's tons of research out there comparing your GPA and your performance, probably in your workplace, but there's very little research actually comparing your GPA and short-term immersion trips and the effect on your compassion and academics. And also, this research is a snapshot of Brophy College Prep, an all-boys Catholic private school. As I mentioned in my previous literature, there is an effect and there is a difference in compassion values between females and males, and obviously my data is heavily male skewed. And this comes, and just analyzing this snapshot outgrowth comes with its own biases. And more research is needed to allow for a stronger foundation of emergent social science, specifically in other types of high schools. Now on implications. So short-term immersion trips mostly do positively affect a general high school body with academics and community engagement, not so much with culture. However, the one thing that I did find in my research that I did not anticipate was that many lower GPA students see a larger performance boost in academics and school involvement than their higher GPA counterparts. So this pattern revealed by my quantitative research makes the study of immersion interesting because more students with lower performance are benefited by these types of immersion experiences. So schools could possibly implement more of these immersion opportunities and push these immersion opportunities on students who are struggling in school, and this can lead to better school performance, community engagement, and performance on conventional tests and lectures. That's it.